I'd like to call the City Council closed session meeting to order. We will resume, what's the proper term? Recess to closed session. Can I ask do I need to ask the city attorney to read the?
We'll do a roll call, and then the city attorney can read.
All right, let's do roll call, please.
Councilmember Burke.
Here.
Councilmember Gama. Here. Councilmember Rollins.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Munoz-Schnapp.
Here.
Mayor Hernandez.
Here. Thank you. Do we have any public comments submitted? None? No? All right. I'd like to ask the city attorney to please announce the closed session items.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are two closed session items tonight. The first is a conference with property negotiators under the authority of Government Code Section 54956.8. The properties involved are on the west side of Market Street between Scott Street and Port Hueneme Road in the city of Port Hueneme. Assessors parcel numbers 206-0-091-385 through 305. The agency negotiators are Brad Connor, City Manager, Charles Crane, City Attorney, Steve Kenny, Consultant, Caras Navigating. The negotiating parties of the City of Port Hueneme and the Port of Hueneme. Under negotiation, negotiate price and terms of payment. The second matter is conference with legal counsel on existing litigation. The authority is Government Code Section 54956.9. The case is City of Port Hueneme versus Dario Pini et al. Case number is 56-2019-00533286-CU-PT-VTA. And that's the conclusion of the closed session items, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, can I make a correction, though, is that I heard the city attorney, when you read the first one, you said -385 through -305, and it's -285. Just a correction.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and recess to closed session. The time is 5:32.
chief. Crazy time.
Yes, biblical, cataclysmic.
Mr. Kenny? How is your granddaughter? Very well. Is she, is she still immunocompromised? Or is she? Very good. So she's sweet as immunocompromised. Okay, great. As long as she's doing it. That's good. Yeah. Even strong, so quarantine together. Yeah, that's right. You know, over 65 group. Yeah. Yeah. Today we're just practicing civil disobedience. Okay. How long that's gonna go on, but, people are going nuts. Not the truth. I'm just trying to see what somebody from the Australian business bill. This morning, current numbers of hotel occupancy. In the space of 2 to 3 weeks, it's gone from 78% to 30%. Oh, yeah, the TOT tax is going to take a shit. Of course, we don't have much TOT anyway. We've got a couple of work budget hotels. And the Holiday Express is not a 5-star resort. So we will not go. It's just a yeah, the whole area. There's a suites on the beach, all over there, over business, 3 months. Okay, we've got a lot of things, a lot of, yeah, a lot of stuff. So it's gonna have a major effect on the economy, and, it'll be interesting. The governor's election is gonna be very interesting. Yeah. Sure is. If we have exists, then I don't exist. It doesn't exist. It'll depend. I think what's going to happen is, unfortunately, I think a lot of at-risk people will pass away. And it could be one, my mom could be one. She's 89 years old. She's at the Ventura Town Home, which is senior living. She's in a one-bedroom apartment. Right now, she's with my brother and sister-in-law. The lady, she's coming back tomorrow. They've instituted where they can't have visitors there. They've closed the dining facility, and the workers are bringing food to the people. And basically, they're asking the residents to kind of just self-quarantine in their rooms. And I can go visit my mom down in the lobby and maintain a distance. And bring drop-off stuff for her. Yeah. But I really think that's, you know, I think a lot of people, unfortunately, much like they're gonna be a victim, much like many more are a victim every year. True. Flu is known. This is an unknown. That's what
the Indian casinos in California are closing.
I said, I think it's probably more of a financial reason than anything else. They don't have a certain number. They probably have, oh, we need this number of people so they can break even. I know they know what it is from a gaming perspective, how much they need to gamble.
You talking about MGM first?
There's a threshold where if they don't have 40,000 in play, they won't even cover their expenses.
I'm gonna leave that way for the
From me, your slide's gonna look like that. And then I'm gonna say, please, and I'm gonna speak a little bit about that. Like this. Yes.
Swap the key for now.
This has gotta be right. Christy just told me like 2 hours ago I had to do a presentation today.
No way. He's not gonna believe you.
I think that's 60.
Should be. Yeah, I have a measuring tape right now. I'm gonna go ahead and, I need all of you to be 6 feet apart, please. So I'm gonna go around and, go and have a seat.
I do.
There you go. Help yourself. There we go.
Oh, wait, it's not working. It's not.
I'm sorry, what is the percentage of that? Is that homemade or?
It's homemade with alcohol. I want a picture of you with that. Hold on. Oh, wait. He has it. Wait. See, I want a picture.
Yeah, I did. I got my tool belt. I was showing off.
And the measuring tape.
And the measuring tape. I'm making sure everyone's 6 feet apart.
Come on up here.
Okay, put the measuring tape out.
It's chilly in here.
Christy, when you get I need a blue pen to sign some of sign this proclamation. So he said it was his. So. Okay, I'd like to call the regular session to order, please. The time is 6:30 p.m. And I will lead you in the flag salute. Please join me. Hand to heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, for our listening audience, we are practicing social distancing, as you can see by our seats and by noticing staff also seating distance apart. And we have our Sergeant of Arms, Chief Andrew Salinas, who's making sure that we are using his measuring tape to make sure we are at least
Can you
beyond
get a
6
tape
feet
over here?
apart.
That's a little,
Looking pretty close.
I know.
All right, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Berg,
Here.
Councilmember Gama,
Here.
Councilmember Rollins,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Munoz-Schnapp,
Here.
Mayor Hernandez.
Here. All right, and Councilmember Gama will be delivering the inspiration.
Yes. My inspiration tonight is all the school nurses and school health aides across this great country. I was going to have the school nurses from Oxnard Union High School District here tonight to be recognized as inspirational, but because of today's current health crisis, we decided it might be better for them to stay home. The reason why I invited the school nurses from Oxnard Union High School District is because I worked closely with them for nearly 17 years. School nurses are inspirational because they put the health and well-being of their students at a greater priority than the money they earn. Any school nurse could earn much more working in the traditional healthcare environment, but they choose to be at school focused on the health of students in our community. In order for a student to be successful in their education, they must be healthy. There lies the underlying mission of all school nurses, that is to improve the health of all students, which in turn leads to a better society. Now that's inspirational. You may be surprised as to the day-to-day life of a school nurse. I want to share with you a couple quick little stories. I remember many nurses, Joyce Sauce, Diane Garcia, Janet Ramsey. Janet Ramsey was a school nurse at Oxnard High School, and she had a knack for being in extraordinary circumstances. One day a student came in and said, "I think my water broke." Janet instinctively called 911. And when the first responders came in, she asked, "Can you please cut this umbilical cord?" Yeah, she delivered a baby in her office. And the baby was healthy and had no problems. Janet also provided emergency first aid treatment to a student who was in the midst of an acute asthma attack. The student died in her arms. The working life of school nurses is both enlightening and heartbreaking. All school nurses experience both. I'm sure all school nurses have dramatic stories, some of heartbreaking scenarios, but many more enlightening, encouraging, and inspirational stories. I recall coordinating an aggressive outreach program with medical administrative activities. We would identify kids who could qualify for Healthy Families medical insurance. So one Friday after all the students had gone home, I get a call from Christina Davis, school nurse at Pacifica High School. And it was late in the day, and she explained she had come into contact with a student who wasn't a straight A student, but was in the midst of a serious crisis who needed help. We were informed of a fast-track process for this exact situation. The student was a straight A student and was in the midst of a serious crisis. So we were able to fast-track, get her coverage, and get her in treatment, avoiding an educational meltdown. These situations happen and sometimes have a different ending, but the fact of the matter is that school nurse cared, and she took the time to look after the student who was in crisis. That student finished her education with grades intact, while at the same time recovering from her personal crisis. A lot of times, these crises have a different ending. So the school nurses of our communities across this nation are the unsung heroes of education. In my time at OUHSD, the school nurses spearheaded the development of a vision screening program for struggling freshman students, where it was learned that 26% of them needed reading glasses. When a student is severely injured, it's the school nurse organizing the 504 plan and for a safe return to school with all the necessary accommodations. In the area of special education, it's the school nurse who's a pivotal member in developing the special needs students' educational plans and making sure that their medical needs are being met by the paraeducators that they train. A lot of these students require such things as G-tube feeding, catheterization, and other complex medical issues. In the area of crisis management, the school nurse is always out front orchestrating grief counseling and other needed services for the students that may be struggling with life. Currently, we as a nation are dealing with this coronavirus. I had already decided to have the school nurses as my inspiration when I became aware of it. I recall the effort of OUHSD nurses during the H1N1 swine flu epidemic. And I was hoping that we were going to have them here today to help deliver some calm and measured statements regarding where we're going with this coronavirus. But it was probably better for them to stay at home. But we're going to send them certificates of inspiration, and hopefully we can bring them back at a later time and we can talk about what we learned as a result of this COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, we're on to agenda approval for city council. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
I'd like to move approval.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Agenda's been approved. I'd like to now ask the city attorney to report out on closed session, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Prior to actually reporting in closed session, I would like to make an announcement for the viewing public in accordance with the Brown Act and advise them that although the public was not permitted to come tonight because of the health crisis, they still may comment on agenda items by sending an email to the city clerk. And if you go to our website, there's a clear way to do that. So we welcome any of your comments. Madam Mayor and Council, there are no reportable actions from tonight's closed session.
Okay, thank you. And just for our listening audience who may have not heard that, if you do have a public comment that you would like to submit on any of the items on the agenda, please use the city's email to send in that comment to us. All right. We have one presentation this evening, right? We're going to hear a presentation on COVID-19, community update from Chief Salinas. We actually have more than that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to wait here for Aaron to drop the screen there. I do have a presentation on this, a visual presentation. So hopefully those at home can join us and follow along. Also, to let the public know, or those that are watching or listening to us, that they can send that email or comment to cityclerk@cityofporthueneme.org. Correct? All right. So a lot of things have changed. Well, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, a lot of things have changed since we last met a couple of weeks ago. We were merely talking about the coronavirus, but things have been developing not only on a daily basis, but on an hourly basis. So we are constantly changing our plan. Our plan is fluid, and we are constantly updating and making changes and actually adapting to our plan. So I wanted everyone here to know that we are taking a very strategic and measured approach in our response to the coronavirus, and we want to be responsible stewards and not add to the hysteria. We're trying to be smart and not be overly responsive, and we understand that every action right now has a ripple effect, so we are being very pragmatic about our decision making. So let's start with what the flu is. Is it up on your screens in front of you?
No, it's not, so. There we go. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to give a brief description, and then I'm going to talk about what we've done thus far and what we plan on doing here in the city of Port Hueneme. So according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, an estimated 32 million Americans have come down with the flu since this year's flu season began this last September, resulting in approximately 18,000 deaths. The flu produces fever, body aches, cough, fatigue, very similar to the symptoms that people who have coronavirus are experiencing, which the coronavirus actually originated in China just this past last year and made landfall in the United States at the end of January. In the U.S., the number of reported coronavirus infections is significantly lower than what was in China. We currently have approximately 3,500 reported cases and 68 deaths in 49 states. When you think about it, that is minuscule compared to the normal flu, as well as our population of approximately 330 million people living in our country today. If we take a look at this map, this is to date. This is what it looks like. The darker states, such as California, Washington, and New York, have the most cases, primarily because they are hosts of international flights. They get the most international flights, and a big part of our contamination was based on travelers who had been abroad, such as in Europe, Italy, and in China. So what's all the commotion about? Why are people freaking out? Why are we seeing these images on TV on a nearly daily basis? And these are the headlines: the stocks dropping, Italy going into quarantine, Disneyland being shut down, events being canceled, store shelves being emptied. It's because it's the fear of the unknown. There are no vaccines or medications for this new virus right now. And the coronavirus has been in existence for only a few months, and there is no natural immunity to it at this time. And this new virus is particularly prejudicial on our senior citizen population, as we'll see by the statistics. So some of you may have seen this online, the coronavirus in terms of the seriousness. Most people will only have mild to very slight severe conditions, and only a few will have critical symptoms as a result of this. It may ultimately result in death, which is anywhere between 3 and 5%. Those that are most at risk are those over the age of 60 or 65, as you can see in this graph here, especially those that already have existing conditions, especially cardiovascular conditions. How contagious is the coronavirus? As you can see, it rates with the similar virus that we had in the early 1900s, known as the Spanish flu at this time. And as you can see, based on the fatality rate, right now China ranks as the country with the highest fatality, along with Italy and Iran. So many of you have also seen this. Why are we responding in the manner that we are? Is because we're attempting to flatten the curve. As you can see the dotted line there on the bottom third of the graph, that's what our healthcare capacity is, and that's what we're trying. We're trying not to go above that line, and so by instituting social distancing, we are attempting to flatten that curve, as opposed to the orange graph that you see right there in front of you. So on average, over 3,000 people die from tuberculosis, as well as hepatitis B, pneumonia, HIV, AIDS, malaria, far more than the regular flu or the coronavirus. And as you can see on the right there, this far exceeds any attention any other virus has received in the media, with over 2.1 mentions in the media thus far, as compared to HIV or even SARS that were only in the 60 million range. So present day, this is what our cases look like. We are trying to prevent a much higher bell curve than that. Right now, based on our response, we are actually keeping it rather flat. But as you can see, it's continuing to increase every day, and that's what we're trying to prevent by creating containment. And why do we want to create containment? Because we just might be able to save just a few lives in responding in the manner that we are, thus creating social distancing and trying to contain this outbreak in our country. So let's talk about what coronavirus is and what it does. They recommend, and it has an incubation period of 14 days, usually 5 to 7 days. The spread is between people to people, normally close contact, 6 feet, and that's why they recommend social distancing and maintaining a distance of approximately 6 feet. People who obtain this disease or virus is generally through respiratory droplets, again from sneezing or coughing, and it's been known to spread very easily because it can maintain itself and sustain itself on surfaces. So how many cases right now do we have in our adjacent counties? And this shows you. We may not have very many community transmissions here in Ventura County or in Santa Barbara County, but our neighboring counties such as LA County does, and that's why our local county health official has taken this so seriously, because it is inevitable with the cases increasing in LA County and the people that work in LA County travel back and forth, that the cases in our county will naturally increase. So just recently, the Ventura County Public Health Department declared a local health emergency as a result of the increased spread of COVID-19 throughout our country. And in alignment with the governor's state of emergency as well as the president, the Ventura County Public Health Department has labeled this a local state of health emergency. And we've also had an increase to 3 travel-related cases in Ventura County, but 1 has only been confirmed. And as you can see by the chart on your right, we've had 1 positive case and 4 presumptive positives awaiting for confirmation from the CDC. So we're going to skip these right here. So what have we done in our city? We've put out this chart here to our city employees, recommending that they stay at home if they are sick or feel sick. We are encouraging everyone to wash their hands, avoid touching their face, eyes, ears, and nose, as well as maintaining a cleanliness around their work areas, as well as cleaning public service counter areas on an hourly basis. And we are encouraging everyone to maintain that social distance of 6 feet. Our top priorities as a city are to continue to protect the health of our community, as well as provide guidance to our employees and our community, and have a measured infectious response plan in place as a city and by department. And as we'll review here later on in the slides, each department has a measured response plan. So let's talk about our community response and what we've done in terms of getting the word out. Many of you have seen these updates on social media as well as our website. We are attempting to update our community on a near daily basis through public releases as well as news releases. So let's talk about social distancing. The Ventura County Public Health has asked that each city develop a social distancing plan. Social distancing means lessening contact between individuals throughout the county and can include identifying those individuals that can work from home, limiting or canceling large gatherings, including work meetings in confined spaces, reducing personal contact with individuals closer than 6 feet, and identifying at-risk employees and having a plan if they are sick. Ventura County authorities want schools, businesses, and other entities to plan ways to limit person-to-person contact and cut transmission risks. So we have developed a response plan that has 4 levels. The first level is preparation and communication, and this includes messaging to all city employees, encouraging all employees to take everyday preventative actions, community messaging and press releases, review and update our emergency response plans, create a social distancing plan, resource identification, send staff and employees who present fever and/or respiratory infection symptoms home immediately, and we will contact the Ventura County Public Health Department if we notice any concerning clusters of respiratory disease or spikes in absenteeism. Our level 2 response. This is going to occur if we have community transmission cases of COVID-19, but no individuals within our work environment, or as directed by the Ventura County Public Health. And so we have initiated this level as a result of the Ventura County Public Health Department claiming a health emergency in our community. As a result, any employees displaying any fever or respiratory infections will be ordered to stay home. We will employ our social distancing plan. We will create individualized department response plans. We will draft a proposed local emergency declaration. We will halt all community meetings. We will consider alternative approaches such as conference calls and video conferencing. And all city-sponsored activities will be suspended, including beach cleanups, museum speaker series, and parks and recreation activities. Our level 3 response. This occurs if one of our city employees tests positive for COVID-19, community transmission is becoming prevalent, or we have school closures, or a local state of emergency is declared. And 2 of those has occurred, which is the school closures as well as the local state of emergency. So what we are looking at and doing now is the city manager or chief of police may consider closure of City Hall and other off-site facilities. This will stay in effect until risk level has been decreased within our community as determined by the local public health officer. We will implement plans to address continuity of city services, including city bills, police and fire. We will implement cleaning guideline protocols for work areas which have potentially been affected. We will implement communication plans for employees to include outreach. This will primarily be done by our HR manager. We will provide continued guidance to our community on social distancing measures, including discouraging employees from gathering elsewhere, such as church, sporting events, concerts, and group activities. We have done that in a number of our news releases. We will employ a flexible work schedule and telecommuting options, and we will look at reducing or altering City Hall hours. So just because we are in level 3 doesn't mean we're going to do all of these. Again, this is very fluid, so we may do part of this plan or all of this plan depending on the severity of the illness in our community. Level 4. These are measures that are going to be taken if there are community transmissions or multiple city employees that test positive for COVID-19 and have the potential for exposing others in the workplace. All city services will cease except for essential functions such as police and fire. So City Hall will be closed. We will maintain a communication plan with employees in the community through the website and social media. We will continue to provide guidance on the importance of community social distancing measures while the city is closed. We will maintain regular communication with the local public health department. The police department will go to a level 1 tactical alert, and I'll explain what that is later on. And we will determine the timing for the return of staff and any additional steps needed for the city to reopen in consultation with the local public health department. So here are some of our specific department responses. The police department, effective tomorrow, Sergeant Starner will be designated as the city emergency preparedness. Did I go too far?
Right to Public Works. There we go.
Sergeant Starner will be designated as the city emergency preparedness manager and will be our point of contact with the Ventura County Emergency Operations Office. We will suspend response to all medical calls unless paramedics or fire department request our assistance. All out-of-county and non-essential training has been canceled in the police department. All March and April discretionary events have been postponed or canceled in our community. This includes community meetings, coffee with a cop, ride-alongs, department tours, and community events. And beginning tomorrow, we will be adding an additional patrol shift to the schedule, and that will be from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. And crime reports, primarily cold reports, will be taken over the phone where applicable. What will the Public Works Department be doing? Public Works will move to maintain essential services such as solid waste, water, and wastewater. No special delivery of roll-off dumpsters or special pickup orders. That will only occur if we go into level 4. Contracts in place which allow Public Works Director to draw assets and personnel from CalWarn. A local contractor will be on call to help us address emergency water line repairs. Water treatment plant is self-sufficient and remotely monitored if necessary, and the water department has 4 operating personnel and can handle a workload with only 2. And sewer lift stations can be monitored remotely, and we can seek mutual aid from the city of Oxnard if sewage spills occur. Our Parks and Rec department. All programming at the community center has been canceled or suspended. Notifications have been made. All rentals, public and private, have been placed on hold through March and are under review for the month of April. All home delivery meal services will continue. S&P volunteer drivers will receive training in the coming weeks as to COVID-19 precautionary measures. Gloves and masks will be provided to each driver. Port Hueneme Historical Museum is closed and all related speaker presentations have been postponed. And city-sponsored beach cleanups will no longer be permitted until further notice. This does not include privately held cleanups that may proceed as normal. The Port Hueneme Little League has canceled their games through April 6th. The Show and Shine car show scheduled for March 22nd at the beach has been postponed. MIG Parks Master Plan public engagement pop-up events have been postponed. The city-sponsored extravaganza event scheduled for April 11th has been canceled. And lifeguard recruitment swim test to be held on March 28th is subject to cancellation. Further review required before we finalize that decision. Human resources. They will start looking at flexible work schedules and telecommuting options. We will cancel non-essential HR events. We will communicate with candidates since we have numerous processes that are currently open. We will review all policies and procedures related to employment and FMLA laws and stay updated on changing laws. Begin work on dependency plans. We will notify labor unions of changing conditions and maintain communication with our employees. Yes, sir.
What is dependency plans?
I was hoping that HR could answer that question. Charles?
Councilmember Rollins, it's a general term to indicate the need to prepare for I'm sorry. I think that Melanie put the item together, and it's a need to understand the dependencies, the interdepartment dependencies, so that when we have telecommuting and make adjustments to our work schedules, that the impacts on other departments are accounted for, so we understand those dependencies and we can accommodate the work that needs to get done when one department sends people home.
Okay. So it has nothing to do with their dependents?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Public Housing Department. We will ensure adequate supplies for continued inspections. Facilities maintenance will wear gloves while dealing with tenant spaces. Facilities will sanitize city public restrooms up to 3 times a day. Only emergency work orders will be completed and continue regular communication with HUD. The Community Development Department will encourage potential customers to do as much over the phone and internet as possible, reviewing processing and late fees. We will stop towing vehicles for vehicle registration violations in order to reduce our interactions with these individuals. They will prepare for flexible work schedules. They will eliminate all unnecessary customer visits to City Hall, such as mandating conference calls and canceling meetings. And as directed by the city manager, they will reduce or suspend services and mandate staff to stay at home as necessary. And they will regularly clean public service counters. Our city clerk will review legal noticing procedures, will create emergency leadership contact list, will review laws on Brown Act and council meetings, will assist with press releases and dissemination of information to the community, will implement a conference call only policy, will prepare for flexible work scheduling, just in case she needs to work from home, and she will communicate with city council about the most recent news and developments in our city. One of the common questions asked right now, if employees exhibit symptoms which are common to COVID-19, can you ask the employee to leave work and go home? And the answer to that is yes. As well as, are we required by law to send employees that are sick home? And the answer to that question is also yes, because it is a serious health condition and a public health hazard. So I wanted to bring out those 2 scenarios real quick. So today, the President of the United States, very similar to the guidelines that our own public health department has disseminated, has issued these 15 guidelines, which include if you feel sick, please stay home. If your children are sick, keep them at home. If someone in your household has tested positive, they're recommending everyone in the household stay home at that point. If you are an older person, meaning over the age of 65, they are recommending that you stay home and away from other people. And if you are a person with a serious underlying health condition, they are recommending that you please stay home. They also are recommending avoiding social gatherings of 10 or more people. They recommend using drive-through and pickup or delivery options. Obviously, avoid discretionary travel. Do not visit nursing homes, and practice good hygiene. These are some of the resources that we have in the county that we recommend the public to please visit. The two big ones are vcemergency.com, and that if they text COVID-19 to 211-211, they can receive updates on their phone. And this last part will be presented by our very own Steve Kinney, who will talk about how businesses will be impacted in our community as a result of this.
Just a second, I think we have a couple of questions, unless you plan on coming back and talking.
I will come back after he's done.
And you plan to talk more about the human resources, our city employee policies regarding absences and dismissal and how they return, what approvals they need to return to work?
Yes, I can answer those questions as well as.
Okay, very good, thank you. Did you still have a question?
It was kind of in that similar note,
Okay.
but I'll wait.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, council, I'll be brief. This is really directed to the community to make them aware of another information resource. This is directed specifically in the arena of businesses and obviously their employees. You know, there are so many ripple effects from everything that's going on. We have to expect that almost everyone who works in Port Hueneme is impacted somehow or is potentially impacted. So we just want to make sure that business owners and employees are aware of some of these information resources. There's a whole guide there from the Economic Development Collaborative that's reached by their website, which is edcollaborative.com. That information will also be, there will be a link on our city website as well. But they cover topics such as loan assistance for small businesses that might be having cash flow problems, delays in having to file payroll taxes with the state, unemployment insurance possibilities for employees. There's a program called Work Sharing, which sounds pretty interesting, both for employers and employees. If there's a reduction in business such that employers can't keep all their people on full time, the Work Sharing program allows the employer to reduce the hours of the employees without having to lay them off, and the reduction in those hours are covered by the employee being able to get unemployment benefits for those hours as well. So there's a lot of flexibility there for both the businesses and their employees. There are small business disaster fund loans. There are a lot of financial instruments available through the EDC. So I don't think I'll go on anymore with the details, just to make people aware that there really is quite a bit available out there. If you know where to look, and a good place to start looking is on the edcollaborative.com website, which again you'll be able to reach via a link on the city's website as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a few questions?
Yes, I had a couple of questions regarding the four-level plan. Thank you, by the way, for doing that. That was well done. But how are the city departments implementing that plan? Are they following those same levels in the measures that they're taking? Because from the presentation, I couldn't, are they doing all these things now, or are they doing it in response to the different levels?
That's a good question. So we are at level 3 right now. The key points I presented for each department, that was just to point out some of the key things that they were going to be doing. Most of those were between the level 1 and level 4 range. So they will be seeking the guidance of the city manager as well as the chief of police before instituting any of those measures. And again, they're going to range depending on how contaminated our community becomes, and it's going to be based on recommendations from our Ventura County Health Department.
So when we direct an employee an employee supposedly is showing symptoms. You send them home, do you give them any instructions on what to do in terms of seeing a doctor, or, and what conditions will they be allowed to return to work?
Yes.
And then what kind of, do they go on sick leave, or do we provide leave pay?
So if we mandate them to go home, they will be on administrative leave. We will provide them instructions. If they are just displaying flu-like symptoms, we are going to recommend that they not visit their doctor so they don't inundate the healthcare system, and they attempt to take care of themselves at home unless they start getting conditions that are more consistent with having something above and beyond what the normal flu
So I
is.
understand they're supposed to call, not show up at an emergency room or urgent care. They're supposed to call first to consult their doctor.
Correct. Correct.
Before, if they suspect that they have the virus.
Yes, you can't just go to your local emergency room and get
Right.
tested. That is correct. And we are giving them this information if we are in fact going to send any of our employees home. And up to this point, I'm not aware of us sending any employees
And
home.
you tell them the length of time they're supposed to stay home?
Which is 14 days, the entire length of the incubation period, or until they have been relieved up to 24 hours of any of the flu-like symptoms.
So do you just, are we automatically waiting 14 days for them to return with no note from doctor, or?
We are not recommending that they go to their doctor to get they can't, you know, I take that back. They can go to their personal doctor, but in terms of going to like the emergency rooms and stuff, we're not
I
making
guess-
those recommendations.
I guess I need to rephrase that. Should they have, I understand that a lot of the medical facilities have set up a call-in. So you can call in and you can deliver your symptoms, and they will tell you whether or not you need to be tested. If you're not required to be tested, they will give you a note, and they can send it to you electronically. So are we gonna require any kind of verification from the doctor that that individual has been basically put at home quarantine or self-quarantine, and these are the symptoms they're displayed, and a test was not recommended? Are we doing anything that requires them to bring back some kind of verification from their doctor?
I do know this, and I can answer this much right now, is I know our HR manager will be providing them with information as to how to go about dealing with their symptoms and what to do in order to return to work.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Police Chief Salinas, for this presentation. You and I maybe had exchanged some emails regarding what the Port of Hueneme is doing, some of our neighboring, you know, whether it's school district, et cetera, and I know
Yes.
you're in touch with them. Can you give us an update there?
Sure, we are in constant contact with those stakeholders, including our school district, the Port of Hueneme, the naval base, and the County of Ventura. I have received texts and phone calls from our superintendent. I have been sharing information with the Port of Hueneme, especially our declaration of emergency, which they've requested a copy of, as well as our response plan, so they can adapt their own response plan. But we are in constant communication. The naval base recently had a briefing on one of their on their situation on the base. We attended that meeting as well, and we have been on nearly daily conference calls with the County of Ventura in regards of being updated on a daily basis as to what's occurring in our county.
One other question I had is, knowing that the community 65 and older is a higher risk, perhaps, do we have any additional information maybe going out to the members of our community in that age bracket? Maybe they don't use a whole lot of internet, and could we get more information out to them?
What I can do is I can look into that, perhaps using reverse 911, since we have declared a local state of emergency, and trying to get that information out to our local senior population via the phone. We will develop information on social media as well as a news release recommending our older population to stay home as recommended by our governor and the President of the United States.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Councilman Hall?
So I talked to some people over at Hueneme Bay, and they seem to be very much on top of everything. But my concern is for the residents of Mar Vista. And I was wondering, perhaps maybe we should have a kind of sidebar plan for that facility. Because I know that many of them are over the age of 65, and many of them have travel issues. And so, anyways, I thought I would just bring that up, mirroring Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, we are taking that location very seriously. Gabby has a plan that she's going to implement, which may include actually manning the kiosk as you walk through the double doors there and actually using that office there. So she will have a person on site during normal business hours to help address people coming in and out of the facility, as well as to address the needs of our 60 residents at Mar Vista.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Question regarding Willowbrook also. There's children there, right? And then they're out of school now. And they've probably got parents who are working or maybe can't work now. Is there something that we could do as a community to maybe help identify what kind of help we could be with that? I don't know, babysitting services or something. And, you know, with the schools closing, my suspicion is because they're the petri dishes out there. They're not going to get necessarily really sick, but they're going to carry it home. So that's probably why the schools are closed. But it's some way to reach out to Willowbrook as well, I think, to see maybe there's something we can do.
Yes, unfortunately, our after-school programs have also been closed, including the Boys and Girls Club in the Hueneme School District. And so they are trying to prevent children from congregating. And so I will talk to Gabby and ask her to respond to that question in greater detail to council, because I don't have the answer to that in terms of what she's specifically doing at the Willowbrook location.
Councilman Rollins?
By the unfortunate situation where a city employee is sent home, do they, you use the term administrative leave, does that affect their sick leave, their vacation leave, or perhaps they don't have either at this point in time? Maybe they're new employees or they're part-time employees. What has been the thoughts on that?
Based on the advice of our personnel attorneys, we would send them and order them to go home, and they would be put on paid administrative leave for the time being.
Okay.
Yes, regardless of how much sick time or vacation time they have on the books.
Okay, I have another question. So being that we have a local declaration or proclamation of emergency and the state's declared, are we tracking our costs in the event somebody does go home and we're paying admin leave? That could be an eligible reimbursement. I think we need to be mindful of that, but any other extraordinary costs that we incur, how are we tracking those so that we can maximize our reimbursement?
That's a good question. For this reason, Sergeant Starna is being activated as our emergency preparedness manager beginning tomorrow, and one of his duties will be tracking all of this information, not only for the Port Hueneme Police Department, but for the entire city.
So that will include the policy, the leave policy for employees?
Yes, any employee that has been ordered to go home, he will be reviewing our policies and procedures. He'll be tracking time, even time to put together this presentation for City Council, press releases, our additional staffing in the police department, since we are adding an additional officer beginning tomorrow, all the overtime that's incurred as a result of that, and so on and so forth.
So it might be a
Madam
good
Mayor,
idea-
if I may, within some of the finer details of the response options that the chief has briefed include a 3-page frequently asked questions specific to employee management of these particular issues that address and answer the conditions by which we would direct an employee to go home, and also the requirements for return to service and those communication things. As part of the resolution that will be before you shortly to endorse and move forward, that was executed on Friday, includes a $50,000 budget wedge on the community fund, and we are creating separate accounting lines specific to manage and account for those costs in preparation mitigation, so that we can capture those, and within our response options, identifying those costs and pushing them into those accounting lines allow us to keep accurate accounting of exactly what those costs will be.
So, very good, glad to hear that. So the other question I had, in the situation status report that Sergeant Starna will be maintaining, could he also include just a quick statement or paragraph on each of our stakeholders on where they are and the actions they're taking, so we can have like a dashboard look at, you know, what the school district is doing, what they're, how they're addressing the current situation, the poor Navy base Boys and Girls Club. I happen to be aware of the fact that the food pantry that opens up on Wednesday, they've canceled that. So those pieces of information I think would be valuable to include. The food pantry on Market, they do a food pantry once a month, and they were seeking information on whether or not they should proceed, but they've gone ahead and decided to cancel.
So I'll have Sergeant Starna create a daily debrief, which will include that information, especially as it relates to our community.
That'd be great, very helpful.
And if I may, on this meal, food service that we normally do, we will continue to, with those particular services out of Park and Rec, but we do have mitigation in place for the delivery, and we have volunteers that have waived their over 65 status in terms of a precautionary avoidance of delivering those to potential carriers.
And can we get some clarification on the beach cleanup, what beach cleanups you're referring to? Because I understand that Councilman Gama's beach cleanup is not a city-sponsored cleanup. So are we referring to, how are we dealing with that?
Madam Mayor, that is correct. Any event where we actually provide any kind of services, including dumpsters, roll-off dumpsters, or any kind of packaging or containers to collect, refuse on the beach, those are the types of events that we would not participate in.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Councilman Rollins?
Yeah, I know it's a concern with everybody, but with all the childcare type facilities closed, and the fact that the parents who in this community that both work, how are we dealing with the fact that we're going to have all these kids unattended? Maybe they're going to be at home, but they're going to pretty much be unattended for large periods of the day while their parents are working, and hopefully their parents aren't sick, but I mean, like, their parents aren't working. Has there been much thought? I'm sure there has been on that.
That is one of the more challenging situations that we're facing right now, with the children being home and both parents working. Hence the increase in police staff during this period to deal with more calls for service as a result of actually families being home and kind of quarantined in their own residence, thus creating the potential for more disturbances or calls for service for the police. But that's going to be a difficult question to answer in terms of what parents can do in order to find childcare in these types of situations, because they're very limited right now.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem?
I'll pass.
Okay.
One more question. I've been seeking to find the answer to this question, so if you don't know, you don't know, but what will success look like, say, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now? Do we have an idea where we can return to normalcy? I mean, do we know?
We don't know. The CDC is recommending 8 weeks at this time in terms of keeping gatherings down to 10 or less. So we're kind of using that as a goal or a time period right now that we're going to try and contain this as much as possible. If we had to put a date on it, or if you're asking for my best estimate, I'd say we'd be back to normal at the end of April, between the end of April and beginning of May.
I think it really depends on what the tests reveal. Right now, we don't have a fully loaded testing capability nationwide, and until those tests are distributed, we're not testing people, and so we don't really know the magnitude.
And it depends on how many people actually self-regulate and actually adhere to the recommendations, and how much we're able to actually contain this virus in our community.
Are we are we expecting, I guess it'd be better to say, so in a week from now, if we haven't sent anyone home sick and haven't had any positive testing or anyone exhibiting the extreme symptoms which require emergency medical treatment, then would that be considered success, perhaps?
It's difficult to say. The Ventura County Public Health Department, actually in a press release just a couple of hours ago, stated that they anticipate more cases and increased community spread as more cases are reported in neighboring counties and throughout the state. So I still think they're preparing for our numbers to go up, and it's going to be inevitable that our communities are infected.
I guess at the macro level, Councilman Gama, the declining trend in terms of new cases will be the kind of lead indicator on kind of the beginning of the end. And then we'll probably have updates and projections of where we can relax some of our response options.
So, any more questions? I have one more and then a statement. How are you changing your police officers' approach procedures so that they're protected from contracting this?
So they all have the N95 masks. They already exercise universal precautions, especially police officers. They carry gloves, the masks. They will also not be responding to any type of medical calls at this time unless requested by the fire department or paramedics. And they will also be decontaminating their police units if they have any prisoners. And we will also be decontaminating our jail cells on a weekly basis.
Very good. Because that would not be good for us. We saw, 11 San Jose firefighters were exposed. Well, a whole department was exposed, and maybe 11 actually contracted the disease. Don't quote me on the numbers, but we don't want to see our first responders impacted.
Right, especially with such a small police department. Right. That is correct.
Right. So thank you so much for leaning forward on this and being looking ahead and being proactive and getting the ordinance, the declaration done, and the press release. Let's keep doing that. And I would strongly recommend we look at worst case scenarios, succession planning, making sure we can fill in behind people who might be out. Thank you. Good work.
Madam Mayor, on that one note, we are creating demographics and likely candidates for remote work, dependent care, whether it's a sick adult or a child out of school, and then we're building in contingencies for those outcomes so that we can maintain a persistent, sustained minimum at a minimum capability in order to provide all the services that are necessary, independent of what the situation is with regard to this virus.
I know that a lot of cities are grappling with this idea of essential employees, non-essential, and who stays and who can work remotely, and it's not an easy slice. I mean, you really have to sit down and figure out almost on a day-to-day, if not weekly basis, who can you send home versus who you can keep or who should stay. So
right, and our contingency plans include cross-training of employees so they can repurpose in other areas if we close a particular part of the service level, or vendors and temporary talent or mutual aid agreements so that we always have a workforce ready to handle our absolute minimum service requirements.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a question, and maybe this is for the chief, but for the CM, on the program that happens down at Ocean View Pavilion, and it involves seniors, perhaps many of them, and it's a daily kind of effort. Do we communicate out to groups like that have a gathering that's more than 10, and do we kind of work with them so that they get their plans in place and work alongside this as we're all grappling with this COVID-19? What are your thoughts there?
Yes, so they are dependent adults and senior population. They're obviously our highest at risk. Sharon and George both have my cell phone number and have a direct line to the police department and the city should they need any resources or any assistance in addressing their adult daycare center that they have there. But I haven't heard of any issues, nor have they requested any of our resources or services to assist them at this time.
Because I would think that as we roll through these weeks is that perhaps more people will need some kind of resource from us or, working alongside us versus then just the school district and the Port of Hueneme and the Navy, but, now rolling out into the community.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. So I submitted a list of questions that I intended to ask tonight. I asked a lot of other questions, but would you consider my list of questions in your planning when you sit down and do some additional planning, and maybe report on them at the next meeting?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have answers, both legal conditioning under some of those answers, but also many of those questions are addressed in some of these response options, so we will answer those specifically.
Okay. All right, good job, thank you, guys. All right, let's move on. Do we have the mini mansions presentation? We're not doing that one, okay. The Red Cross Month Proclamation. Okay, so I have the proclamation here, and we don't have a representative from the Red Cross, but I'll go ahead and read the proclamation, and then this will be delivered to them. Okay. I worked with the Red Cross for many years, so I'm glad we're doing this. This is Red Cross Month, so this is why we're doing it now. Whereas March is American Red Cross Month, a time when we recognize a humanitarian organization that eases people suffering during life's emergency in the city of Port Hueneme, across the United States, and all around the world. The city of Port Hueneme has a long history of helping our neighbors in need by delivering shelter, care, and hope during disasters, making our community safer through its life-saving home fire campaign, providing life-saving blood, teaching skills that save lives, and supporting military veterans and their families. During this Red Cross Month, we thank and honor the selfless volunteers, dedicated employees, and generous supporters who make this compassionate work possible. And whereas last year in the city of Port Hueneme, volunteers in the community helped those affected by wildfires across the state, including the Maria and Easy fires in Ventura County. In addition, volunteers helped more than 100 people affected by 74 home fires throughout the county by addressing their urgent needs like food and lodging and providing recovery support. Furthermore, when large disasters like Hurricane Dorian and the severe flooding in the Midwest that devastated families in other parts of the country last year, our local volunteers left their homes to work alongside partners to provide refuge, food, relief items, emotional support, recovery planning, and other assistance. And whereas the Red Cross continues to work with its partners to prevent fire tragedies throughout its National Home Fire Campaign, which installed its 2 millionth free smoke alarm last year and has saved hundreds of lives across the country since launching 5 years ago. In the community, volunteers and local partners have installed more than 600 free smoke alarms throughout the county. And whereas in the greater community, the Red Cross provided services to more than 250 members of the armed forces and their families, we recognize volunteer heroes in the city of Port Hueneme who make this work possible to help our neighbors when they need a helping hand. And whereas every day people in our community depend on the American Red Cross, whose life-saving mission is powered by the devotion of volunteers, generosity of donors, and partnership of community organizations. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of Port Hueneme hereby recognizes and proclaims March 2020 as Red Cross Month. We further encourage all Americans to support this organization and its noble humanitarian mission. And I would like to say that I did participate in the smoke alarm installation last year. The fire department helped us equip houses with fire smoke alarms, I should say. And the Red Cross is always there. Whenever we have a house fire, we had a couple of house fires, apartment fires this year, they're always there to house the affected tenants. And so we're so grateful for their service. Any comments? Okay. So if you're out there, Red Cross, thank you very much. Public Works Quarterly Update. Mr. Don Delafano.
Good evening, City Council, Madam Mayor. This is the update. It's from October through February, and if Aaron could please load that.
I didn't see one.
Is it there? All right, thank you, Aaron. All right, this is the update. As I said, it's from October through February. And we've instituted a citywide pavement maintenance plan. We've crack-filled all of northbound Ventura Road and southbound Ventura Road, Volker and neighborhoods. We've completed phase 1, 2, and 3 of a multi-year pavement maintenance plan for Ventura Road. Ventura Road is now resurfaced from Surfside to Pleasant Valley. We anticipate later this year to continue on to go to Channel Islands Boulevard. And we are continuing to make asphalt repairs throughout the city. There's a few photographs of phase 2 resurfacing of Ventura Road. Phase 3 resurfacing, which was from Wainimi Road to Surfside. Councilman Gunn.
I just want to ask one real quick question. So the other day, I was at the stoplight, and I noticed, did the striping veer to the right or left or something? Because when I went to go into my lane, the car next to me thought I was in their lane, and they got really nasty with me. And then I said, what just went on? Then when I came back the next day, I realized that it looks like there's a little offset, or is that?
That matched the existing, what was there before.
Okay.
You could put what's called cat tracks through the intersection.
That might help.
But no, that can confuse more than it helps. So we opted not to put the cat tracks through there. So we maintained what was there before.
Yeah, okay. I thought it just looked different.
It does, there is a visible, but that replicates what was previously there. So we've completed the phase 3, and we've done a number of asphalt repairs in numerous areas throughout the city, potholes, and more importantly, right in front of the railroad crossing on Channel Islands Boulevard. We continue to improve our traffic and pedestrian safety. Since October, we've installed 2 more radar speed signs on Wainimi Road, and that now brings the total into the city of 10 in the past 3 years. When I got here 3 years ago, there was only 1 radar sign in the city. We installed a stop sign at Crossjack and Seaside over there by the Marlboro development. And we had a number of requests to look at this intersection and do something about the speeders. We also had put a radar sign on out there also. We installed 2 high-intensity LED crosswalk lights, one at Claren Ventura Road and one at Scott. The sidewalk inspection program is underway, and one of the priorities was our schools. We have 4 public schools in our city, and we've inspected the paths of travel around all of these. Our senior housing area is another high priority, and we've inspected the areas around Wainimi Bay, and we are currently replacing and have replaced sections of sidewalk there. Miranda Park cameras, our street crew installed the conduit, and I'm waiting for a contract from Spectrum to pull the cable. Park Walkways concrete program, Miranda Park concrete repair. The design was completed, the contract awarded, and construction will start in April, and that will replace the cracked and uplifted concrete in Miranda Park. Beach Park bike racks. Our street crew installed 2 bike racks by the restaurant earlier this year. Civic Center ADA upgrades. The interior, the preliminary design is complete. Exterior ADA upgrades. The design was completed, the contract awarded, and weather permitting will be starting this later this month. We've had a couple of rain delays. It was scheduled to start earlier this month. We continue to update our city engineering standards. This had not been done since 1996. Social media outreach, we've increased our social media presence in 2019. We created a Facebook page for Public Works to inform the residents about projects. We have educational material on there, best practices and maintenance activities, and we're going to continue to expand that this year. We finalized digitizing all the Public Works related plans, and those are available on our server. So anybody in the city can digitally access those now. Christmas tree delivery to City Hall in November. Public Works has been doing that, and there's our Christmas tree being delivered with the assistance of our street crew. Beach park improvements. We have added trash can lids with chains on most of the plastic trash cans out at the beach, along with the concrete trash cans on the pier. We've added concrete pads and hot coal receptacles so that people will have a place to put those hot coals instead of putting them in the plastic trash cans. Annual Christmas tree pickup in January. We pick up the trees and we mulch them, and we spread the mulch in planters throughout the city. City Hall trees, we had one that was dead, and we planted two, the Christmas tree from this past December, and also a tree that was donated by a resident. That went in right there at the entrance to the parking lot on the south side. Tree trimming in the rec corridor. This is ongoing, and we're trying to maintain that rec corridor as best as possible. Beach park improvements. We've continued ice plant replanting in parking medians and perimeter parkways. On the left, you can see the before, and on the right, you can see the after. Important to point out, on the left there, you see a probation work crew. We have leveraged this work crew. I had the unfortunate information today that the county has canceled our use of work crews until at least April 15th. So that's going to affect our ability to do some of our landscaping and maintain the city, because that's a very effective way. For less than $600 a day, we get a crew of 8 to 10 people with a correctional services officer, and we only have to deploy 2 of our staff. So that's a real good program. Unfortunately, that's put on hold for the next 6 weeks.
Due to the coronavirus?
Yes, exactly. Beach park palm tree trimming. We have completed that. We're getting ready for the summer season, and I think our palm trees look good out there. Sand dune restoration. Somewhere between 2011 and 2012, the sand dunes were removed by my predecessors. I do not know why. They were on the seaward side of the walk, and they protected somewhat sand blowing onto the walk and then blowing onto the grassy areas, which, as a result of them having been removed, has had a sand buildup and raised those grass areas. We're restoring that. We've already started on that. That's underway. Emergency creek clearing. In December, I had our probation crews out there. Very effective use of probation crews. Unfortunately, I can't use them. I was going to try and get them later this week to do some more clearing, but they are now not available. That was right just downstream of our bridge at Port Hueneme Road. We're on to park cleanup. On the left, you see before by the railroad, a lot of brush, a lot of trees where people could hide. You see on the right, it's clear. Again, we had our maintenance, our landscape, we had 2 of our landscape people there, and we had the probation crews picking it up and putting it into dumpsters.
Well, I see something, if you could go back to that slide, please. I just saw, could you talk about the arborist? Temporary.
We have a temporary arborist on board through a employment agency. So that's how he's of great assistance. He's been a great help trying to catch up on some things. All right. Our water rate workshop was completed, as you know. The 218 process was completed. We have 2 wells, emergency wells. Well 6A is over by Channel Islands Boulevard. I had a choice. The Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency gave me a choice. I can either abandon these wells or I can rehabilitate them. These are a valuable asset to the city. They are our emergency backup, and we will never get an opportunity to drill wells again. So we've opted to rehabilitate them. Here's a picture of our work on the well. We pulled the wellhead, we pulled the motor, we had a TV camera go down it. There's another picture of the water well 6A rehab. And on the right, you can see a cross-section of that well. It was drilled in 1964, and its depth is over 900 feet. It penetrates the Fox Canyon aquifer. And you can take a look at that if you want to closer. Same way with water well 4. This is in the Bubbling Springs area and would serve the south side of the neighborhood, or the city. It was drilled in 1975 and is over 1,200 feet. And we're in the process of pulling the wellhead on this. We're going to have a number of things we have to do with this. And I'll be coming back probably in late April to give the city council an update on the progress of these well rehabs.
Councilman Donald?
Is, how long is the pipe last in these wells? I mean, 30 years is a long time. It's more than 30 years actually now. So at some point, would you have to replace all the casing that goes down into the well?
Okay, the casing, what we have is we have 100 feet of what's called column pipe. And we pulled that out, and that's at General Pump in Camarillo. I went over there and inspected it myself, and unfortunately, we're going to have to replace all of that. And I'll be coming back to council with that. Now, this is coming from the enterprise funds, but this is a valuable asset that we don't want to we just don't want to just abandon. And with respect to the casing, yes, the casing, we had a TV camera go down well 6A, and I've got a video of that. We have to do what's called a brush and bale, where we brush the casing and we capture the sediment, and then we take that out. And that, because the casing has perforations. We have a sanitary seal, and then we have the perforations in the Fox Canyon aquifer zone. And so some of those have been plugged with sediment. So this brush and bale process will clean the majority of those. But for the most part, the casing is in reasonably good shape, even though it's pushing 40 plus years. So, any other questions?
No, I just find it amazing how long these assets can function.
Right, well, we do need to maintain them, though unfortunately, for whatever reason, they have not been made. No one else did anything on them. All right. We had a major water line break in December. That was at Clara Street and Dahl. It was a 6-inch cast iron or ductile iron water line. You can see it on the right, and it weighs about 90 pounds, and is a conversation piece in my office. And that was all hands on deck. Even the police chief was out there.
I see he was supervising there.
That went late into the night. That was our crews, our combined crews, our street crew and our water crew and our wastewater crew. It's an all hands on deck when this happens. And we were out there till about 10 o'clock at night restoring the water. And then, of course, additional water service leaks and repairs throughout the city. We're continuing to do that. This was in the month of February. We had 3. Implementation of the Phase 1 Water Master Plan. The cross-space pipeline capacity study is in preliminary design, and I anticipate completion of the design later this year. I plan to come back to City Council in May and do a presentation on that, along with a consultant. This will provide water to the north side. We have a 24-inch PHWA line that goes to the base. It reduces to 18-inch and goes across the base, and then a 12-inch line feeds the Channel Islands Beach District. What I'm proposing to do, and we're studying the hydraulics on it, is to connect at almost the west end of the base and take that 18-inch line up Victoria to Channel Islands. The construction costs are tremendously less and logistically quite a bit less than trying to replace the line on Ventura Boulevard, which would be a construction nightmare. So this will relieve the problem of fire flow problems on the north side. It's a win-win for the Navy because they have issues at the north side of the base. I've been partnering with our Navy people on the base. So I'm going to come back in May and give a presentation on that with a consultant.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Villafana, because this has been on our list for a number of years, ever since Dave Norman was here, knowing that we have the water pressure situation up in that area to then fight fires. And so this is a really big win for us. So good work on that and starting that study.
Okay, street sweeping. The street sweeping of city parking lots and parks had been curtailed. We brought that back. Our solid waste division rehabilitated.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Can you go back to that?
Sure.
Councilman Burke, sorry.
Thank you. Why'd you bring it back?
Why?
Yeah.
We brought it back because we have a lot of complaints about our parks and our city lots being full of sand and,
So we had stopped it for a reason, and
right.
wasn't a very good one, I guess.
Was
Or
it budgetary?
yeah, budget.
It was budgetary, but we're using enterprise funds, solid waste funds, because it is cleaning trash. So there is a nexus.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go forward. Okay. Our solid waste division, they rehabilitated over 300 dumpsters this last 5 months. And what they do is they bring them in, they weld the holes at the bottom, they paint them, they clean them, and they put them back out in the field. And it saves money, and we have a cleaner neighborhood.
Sure do look better.
Yeah.
New vehicles, we have a number of old vehicles. You can see some of the rust on those old vehicles, and those are being replaced, a number of them, not just in Public Works, but throughout the city. Coming soon, we're going to continue to look at and enhance our pedestrian safety throughout the city. The Bolker area resurfacing, that design was completed, the contract awarded, and construction will start in April. We were waiting for good weather to do that. The Ann neighborhood resurfacing, the design has been completed, the crack filling has been completed, and I'll be coming back to the city council in May to award a contract for that. Speed cushions, they will be coming to Clara over the summer. Illuminated street sign replacement, that will be coming later this summer. Going back?
Can I ask, can you go back to the Clara Street, you
Sure.
call them speed cushions? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, the speed cushions, we've had a lot of, when I first got here, we had a lot of concerned residents about the speed down there. And so we did is, I got a contract traffic engineer, he and I worked at a layout, and speed cushions, what they are is they're a series of approximately 4x4 asphalt raised cushions, if you will, in the street. And they're large enough, or a regular passenger car can't straddle them. However, a fire truck can, because you've got a valuable piece of equipment that you don't want to get rattled and damaged. And that's what will happen if a fire truck is racing down a street and hits one of these, a speed bump. And the city of Ventura, their fire department uses the speed, they will have the speed cushions. The county of Ventura uses it. Most jurisdictions, because of their fire equipment, use the speed cushion now. Now, a regular passenger vehicle will not be able to straddle these, and that's what these are. And the precise placement and everything will be worked out between myself and the traffic engineer, and we'll also be having a community outreach, because everybody wants a speed cushion, but not in front of their house, because there are some inherent noise when cars go over this. And sometimes the street sweeping isn't as effective if you have the speed cushion in front of your house. So we'll have a public outreach probably later this summer.
Thank you.
Again, the illuminated street signs will be replaced. Accessible pedestrian signals. These are for our visually impaired residents and visitors. We've installed 2 of these, one at the Clarence and Ventura Road crossing, and also at Scott. And we've got several other locations that will be installing these in the next 6 months. Storm drain rehab. We have a number of storm drains that need rehabilitation. We've got corroding steel pipe under our streets that need some rehabilitation. And this is a list of projects that will be coming up. And in wastewater, we have a number of lift stations, and we're going to be rehabilitating several of them. Oh, Councilman.
Sorry. I'm so intrigued by your presentation. Not
Yeah,
really raised
I'm
it.
intrigued.
Sorry.
Can you go back one slide? Is that a brick casing?
On the right-hand side.
There's some,
How old is that?
that's probably circa 1950s.
That's it's still in good shape. I mean, apparently.
Some of it is, some of it isn't, though.
Yeah.
You can see on the left, you've got corrosion and things. We have to get a TV camera to go through these and take a look at it. We also, if we put a person through there, we have to use the confined space protocols to get people through there. So, no, we haven't finished identifying everything that needs to be redone, but we're going to start
So the top one is what it will look like when you rehab it?
when we line it.
When you line it,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Councilman Burke?
Wastewater, as I said, we have several lift stations that we're going to be doing some upgrades and motor replacement on there, and they're lining portions of our sewer system. Fortunately, our wastewater system is in fairly good shape. A lot of it has been worked on already. Fred Camarillo has been proactive with that over the past several years and before I got here, and he realigned a number of manholes. So our wastewater system is in much better shape than our water system. So that's a good thing. But we have repairs that we have to do and upgrades. Wastewater rate workshop. As you know, we collect our wastewater and it goes to the Oxnard Wastewater Regional Plant. There's a number of upgrades that are going to have to be done to that. And we anticipate we're going to have to pay our pro rata share. So in the next year, we will be having a wastewater rate 218 process as very similar to what we just did for the water. So this is one of the things to be coming. And our water division, we have over 3,000 valves in the city, many of them over 70 years old. We have a city-wide water service replacement and also city-wide water valve replacement. You can see an old valve. That was on Clara Street on the right, and you can see what we replaced it with. And I've taken that out to a couple of the food truck events to show people what's happening out there under our streets. And our division, we have 46 FTEs. We have 12 vacancies. And for the past 2 years, I've been without a water general manager. We also have a number of other vacancies. But I'm optimistic now. We have a new deputy city manager and we have an HR manager. So I'll be working closely with them, and hopefully within the next 6 months, we'll be able to fill that water general manager, because I've been juggling a lot of things and wearing multiple hats for the past 2 years. So looking forward to getting those filled. And that's it, and if there are any questions.
Councilman Rollins.
The cameras at Miranda Park, I know that's been a challenge. Where are they at on that? I know there was work done and some issues came up, but where are they at right now?
Well, right now, right, there were issues. Frontier Communications we were working with them. Unfortunately, they're at the brink of bankruptcy right now. And so that's been a real challenge. What we did is I met with Spectrum, and Spectrum identified where they had a point of connection. So we had our city street crew, with the specifications from Spectrum, install the conduit. And so I've got to follow back up with Spectrum and get the contract finalized so they will pull the cable. I've been in contact with the contractor that the port uses to supply their security cameras. And once I get that cable pulled by Spectrum, we'll be installing the poles and getting those cameras finally up. So I'm still anticipating several more months.
You had done some research regarding the graffiti along, I don't know, it's the drainage canal that goes in the center of Channel Islands Boulevard?
Yes.
What's come of that?
Well, that's a watershed protection jurisdiction. I did reach out to my contacts at the county, and they will only cover graffiti if it's obscene. They did come out that Saturday and cover that graffiti. However, what has to happen, facilities now, and Gabriella, She handles facilities and graffiti. I sent her the process. She needs to apply for an encroachment permit and obtain an encroachment permit from the County of Ventura Watershed Protection District if the city wishes to have facility staff go into the drainage channel and cover the graffiti.
Okay. And, all right.
Councilman Gahn?
Yes, so a question came up as we were doing beach cleanup this weekend. We did Saturday and Sunday because of all the runoff debris. And was there a trash boom and on the J Street runoff channel, I guess, is that what it's called? But there appears to be a trash boom on the bubbling stream portion. Well, the water flows into this big old thing, and it appears that it filters out plastics,
Right.
balloons,
That's
styrofoam.
the J Street Canal, that's under Watershed Protection District.
Okay, so is there a possibility to get a trash boom installed? I mean, the amount of trash that came out on this third or fourth rain cycle was just devastating to. I mean, it's amazing how much trash. So, is there a possibility for a trash boom to try and collect it before it runs out to the ocean?
Well, the J Street Canal is actually outside our jurisdiction, and Watershed Protection maintains that canal, and they maintain that outlet there. So I'd have to talk to them. I don't know what their plans are, what their capability, or what they plan to do. So I'd have to contact them, and I'd have to come back to council with an answer.
Okay.
The city could not do it unilaterally.
Right.
I do have a question. Yeah, you mentioned the planning maps or the facility maps. Are those all business maps that you've now digitized for every business in the city? Is that what you were referring to when you showed us that slide on the
No,
plans?
we have a number of plans, and unfortunately, some of my predecessors didn't keep very many plans. Many were tossed. So we don't have a complete record of everything that was constructed in the city. A lot of those are city facilities, city streets. There are a number of plans of developments, a number of things that Mr. Tony Stewart is under his jurisdiction. And our principal engineer, Charles Cable, is here tonight. He has a better idea because he oversaw that project. He could probably give you a better idea of exactly what type of plans are underneath.
Okay, well, it just sounds, I have a follow-up question, but it sounds like it's a combination of private businesses, developments, and city-owned.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so what concerned me was the statement that you said all city staff, all city employees have access to those plans. Is that true? Every city employee can log on and look at those?
They're
plans?
on the server, yes, right.
Okay. That concerns me, just for security issues and target hardening purposes. I mean, could we somehow limit access to those plans? Would you consider that? Would maybe the city manager and chief of police, considering some of those plans might go to our critical facilities and we don't want those to get out to the public, or they could be conceivably used against us in some way?
May I?
Yes.
Those documents are all public records. Now, it's possible if a finding is made that you can limit access to a public record, and that may be sufficient grounds that you mentioned, but it's not something that we can just do lightly since it is a public record and there's, the public by law has it.
Yeah, I'm not talking about public access, I'm talking about employee access right now, and it just seems a little concerning that every employee would have access to it, and it could get out to the public. At least when you have a public records request, you know who's requesting it. But if you don't have any controls on that information getting out, then that could be a concern.
I'll circle back with the city attorney, the city manager, and our IT department, and I'll come back with an answer for you.
Thank you. And thank you for all the great work. Did you have a question?
No.
Thank you, Charles, Cable, and Fred Camarillo, and certainly you, Don, for all the hard work you guys do. It's an awful lot of work, and doing it without full staff is incredible. I don't know how you do it, and now you've lost the probation people, so good luck. Hopefully you
Well,
hang in there with us.
I've got a very good team. I'm very proud to
Yes, I
lead
think you do.
Public Works. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you again. All right, we're now moving on to our consent agenda, and I'll go ahead and read the items. Item number 5, approved minutes of the City Council for the regular meeting of March 2nd, 2020. Number 6, approved finance cash disbursements for February 25th, 2020 through March 5th, 2020. Item 7, professional services agreement with Milner via Engineers for additional engineering and temporary staffing services. Item number 8, adopt a resolution amending the benefits and additional compensation for unrepresented executive management and management and professional employees. And item number 9, ratification of side letter to comprehensive memorandum of agreement with Fort Hueneme Police Officers Association. I believe I have to abstain. I have to abstain from item number 5 because I was not here. Is that correct? That's the minutes. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So move on the consent agenda with your abstention on item number 5.
Thank you, perfect. Second?
I'll second that.
Mayor Byrd, Councilman Byrd, seconds. Take a roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Munoz-Schnapp,
Yes.
Councilmember Byrd,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes, with one caveat, if I may. I can barely see you down there.
Are you asking to pull an item?
I just have a question on an item on the check disbursement record. So on NG Services, I see some big payments going out, and one of them is roof replacement for $230,000. So I was wondering, has that roof been replaced already, or?
The contractor has yet to begin any activity on executing the contract. So that'll be part of a evolving project management schedule, which I have available to me.
So we paid for the service, but it hasn't been performed yet, I guess? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
We've executed a purchase order for approximately $3.7 million. We've executed the debt activation to support all those projects, and the project is just now gearing up to be executed.
Okay.
Down payment.
Yeah, because we were going to borrow money to get this done. Remember?
Okay. I have a motion and a second. And a roll call vote, please.
Okay, I'll start over.
Yes.
Okay. I think Mayor Hernandez, you were the only one with your
Okay.
abstention.
Yes. So the motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, public hearings, we have none. We'll move on to community development, item 10, 2019 Annual General Plan and Housing Progress Report. That's Mr. Tony Stewart.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council, staff, and audience. Actually, I have this item and the next item, so I'll just stand up here for both of those.
Okay, great, thank you.
So this is actually a routine item. Every year, each jurisdiction in the state is required to provide an update on their housing element progress. We also combine in the entire general plan as well. We started that last year and continue on moving forward. With regard to this particular item, since we are built out, there's not a whole lot to report on right now in the general plan, other than we are able to at least inform the readers now that we have a general plan update in progress. So in a couple of years, we'll have something to report on. With regard to the housing element, currently, as you folks probably know, we have a regional housing needs assessment number of two units, one low income and one very low income. We have until the end of 2021 to get those two constructed. We have had 4 accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, constructed this year, which do qualify towards meeting a city's RENA number. And we've also had, as you can see right around the corner, a house that was a former office building converted back into a single-family home. However, none of those have been permitted per our new ADU ordinance, and so we can't right now qualify those to be low or very low income, but we are hoping that we will be able to with future ADUs. In addition, we do have a new entitlement application in for 5 affordable townhome units from Habitat for Humanity, so we should be able to hopefully meet our RENA numbers by the end of 2021. As part of our report here also, I have to report on the Housing Successor Agency and their compliance with their reporting. And so the former redevelopment agency, the assets of that are now in our housing asset fund. And with regard to that, these funds can be spent on administrative costs, homeless prevention and rapid rehousing services, as well as affordable housing development. In fiscal year 2018 and 19, which is the year reporting on here, the city's administrative costs were about $231,000, which did not exceed the maximum allowable of $253,000. We did not expend funds for homeless prevention, and we did not provide any affordable housing development-related expenditures. Also, during that year, the successor deposited $376,087 into the fund. And with that deposit, the total fund balance is now $1.543 million, of which about $477,000 is unencumbered as cash. This is not considered excess surplus by the state, and therefore the successor agency is in compliance with its regulations. And so with that, that concludes my report. And with your direction, staff will file this report this week with the State Housing and Community Development Department, as well as the Governor's Office of Planning Research. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Stewart?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So thank you, Mr. Stewart, for this pretty big document here that we were able to go through. And the numbers that you just covered just a few seconds ago, you said we had a total of 1.54 million.
1.34, yes.
And it's basically it's come from 2 different sources.
Correct. So it comes from primarily, well, it all comes from our successor agency properties, and many of those are residential units that we own and we collect rents from, and then also just from various entities, property taxes and whatnot that are also part of that particular group of properties that we own.
So is this the first time that we've had over, $1.5 million to work with, or?
Well, it keeps growing, and now keep in mind some of that is encumbered. Right now, it's about $477,000 that we have in cash that is unencumbered. The rest of it is encumbered for various, again, improvements and other requirements for those properties. But right now, we do have close to $500,000 unencumbered in that fund.
Okay, and then. Another question I had. So with the ADUs that are underway right now, the reason we can't count them towards satisfying the 2 is what?
Because they were permitted prior to our current ordinance going into effect.
And the current ordinance then said it would be low income?
Well, what we require in our current ordinance, and I'm not sure how much longer we'll be able to do that depending on the state's latest and greatest laws, but right now we do require that unless the ADU is to be used for family or say a health care provider that's providing for the resident, it does need to have an affordable housing agreement tied to it, and that way we guarantee these not as $3,000 a month garage conversions, but instead as true affordable units.
And so that will go into effect in the future.
Right. So, for instance, we have one that's in the process right now. So if they don't qualify for those exemptions, then yes, it would come into play for that.
And will we know that when?
That'll, when they come in and pull permits for the actual unit, we'll either require that agreement or they'll have to tell us who it is. And then in either case, they'll still have to report annually to us who the resident is.
They do, so
Yes.
that's on an ongoing basis, not just one and done at the very beginning?
That is correct, yes.
In order to be able to then qualify the unit?
Correct.
Okay, and would that help us then in ongoing numbers that come through for satisfying?
It should.
Units?
Yes, it
Okay.
should. The state is continuing to allow ADUs to qualify as RENA numbers. As we all know, our new number is looking to be about 125 units with the next 8-year cycle coming up. So yes, it'll be great if we can continue to use these units for that.
Okay, a couple other questions is that under goal 11 and goal 12, there was a paragraph for implementation. I kind of saw that perhaps that implementation huge paragraph needs to be split up a little bit so that you would identify like what's going on for the electrical and natural gas utility and then the communication system. So just trying to clarify that for.
I actually tried to combine it into one to qualify those two, but I could have made 2 paragraphs, I guess. But instead of going goal 1 or 11 and 12, because they were kind of related, so that's why I combined the 2.
And then in there, was there any further stipulation about, looking at charging stations? I know it was more of that master plan of NG and trying to see if we could gather some steam to maybe have some units considered for the city.
Keep in mind that these goals were written back probably in 1998, so no. But with our new general plan coming online, we will definitely, obviously, be looking at things like that. We're going to have our climate action plan, greenhouse gas reduction plan, and whatnot. So those will all be components of that new state-of-the-art general plan.
Okay. And then one question, and I don't know where this fits in, but if the base, like say Hueneme, and maybe this is more directed to the city manager, but if the base ends up building more housing units, does this community then benefit from it? And could we count those numbers, or how does that work?
Apparently, yes, we can. I didn't realize that, but when we had our general plan kickoff meeting a few weeks ago, our housing consultant was here, the one who was going to be preparing the new housing element, and she emphatically said yes. If they are new units, can't be replacement units, but if they are totally new additional units, then yes, they can be counted towards our RENA.
So that would certainly be, the relationship and building of all of that and continuing on is to, understand where they're going with their planning and how that can really help us out with the housing element. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so this is recommendations, receive the information provided by staff and any public comment made on the item and direct staff to submit the annual report to the California Department of Housing and Community Development and the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. May I have a motion and a second?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think we need a roll call vote for this, sorry.
Councilmember Rollins?
Yes.
Councilmember Gama?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Munoz?
Yes.
Mayor Hernandez?
Yes. Thank you, Tony. And you're going to stay there, right?
Yes, I am.
For item 11, tobacco retailer and electronic vaping products licensing resolution setting fees.
Right, I'm kind of pitch hitting for Kevin and Charlie here. So
Okay.
This is going to be very brief, though, because we've already gone through everything with regard to the ordinance. This particular resolution is simply to set forth the annual review fee as well as to put together or establish the actual license. I've created the license at this point, and it's ready to go up online tomorrow with your approval. And then the fees was based on working with, as you may or may not know right now, we're going through a fee study and looking at how to update all of our fees. And so I worked with our consultant working on that to basically identify how many hours various staff members would be spending on this licensing, not only the initiation, but also the annual renews. renewals, and then using the actual costs of each employee, we came up with the two fees that are recommended. The initial application fee would be $502, and then annually it'd be $366. So that is my presentation, and I'll try to answer any questions you have.
Just one question. How are we notifying these establishments that this fee is going to be instituted?
Those that don't already know will go ahead and be mailing out letters to them.
All right, any questions? Councilman Rollins? And
Only because you brought it up, the business license fees, will that be part of this study that you're doing or not?
No, that's a whole different ballgame and a whole different topic we can't really discuss here.
Okay.
But it is outside of that. We're just looking at actual city fees, permits, what Public Works charges, what my department charges, and basically just permitting type of fees.
Okay.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. So, thank you, Mr. Stewart. On starting this with not only registering first time, but then on ongoing, what are the benefits that we would have for the community by doing this?
Well, I would say that the benefit would be that we want to ensure, much like we do with our cannabis businesses, that these particular business owners maintain compliance with our newly adopted ordinance and continue to do so. Otherwise, we do have a mechanism built into the ordinance that we could either fine them or ultimately shut them down. And so that is all spelled out in the ordinance that you approved a few weeks ago.
Would there be a report coming back to this dais, maybe on a yearly basis, about, what this has helped, maybe curtail in the community, some of the benefits for all of us to see, not just, this group here, but our community really to see the benefit of implementing something like this? Because it does take us a little bit of time to work through this all, but could we see that in the future?
I don't see why not, at least, say for the first few years to see how this is playing out. Sure, that's something that we could consider.
Because I remember when the Future Leaders of America came, they actually measured us against, what should be happening, and we got big fat zeros, I think, on many of those elements. I just want to make sure that if somebody's measured us and, proclaimed this, that this would be work to then counter that as well as provide then a benefit.
Right.
Okay. All right, thanks.
I just want, based on the fees that you're charging, is there any estimate as to the total revenue that, based on the amount of businesses that would be affected? Approximately.
It would be fairly minimal. I think we have, about 8 to 10 of these businesses right now in the city. So you just multiply it out, basically.
Okay.
So it's not going to be a substantial amount of money.
Okay.
Mr. City Attorney, did you have?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to note for the council's information that I have been corresponding with a representative from the Future Leaders of America regarding regulations on which didn't apply to the licensing, but and we actually had a meeting scheduled. I had to postpone due to leaving the state unexpectedly, and I still intend to meet with them because they're quite interested in providing the city attorney's office with information about what regulations are out there and what they would see as being an appropriate scope of those. So that may be coming back at some point in some format, but I just want you to know I'm in communication with you.
Thank you. All right, any more questions for Mr. Stewart? All right, thank you, Mr. Stewart. I'll now entertain a motion and a second to adopt the resolution of the City Council of the City of Port Hueneme to approve the establishment of a tobacco retailer's license, an annual renewal fee in accordance with the Port Hueneme Municipal Code, Section 5618.
So moved.
Second.
And we need a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Councilmember Rollins,
Yes.
Councilmember Berg,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Munoz,
Yes.
Mayor Hernandez.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to Finance Department, item 12, contract extension for auditing services.
Good evening, everyone.
This first one is an audit extension. It was kind of an oversight. I was thinking it applied to this coming June 2020 and the next year because I thought it was in line with the PHWA audit contract, which is a separate agency, but it's actually for the audit that's the next item on the list. We effectively did not get the contract approved and have it in front of council. So this is for last June's audit and then next June's audit coming up.
For 18-19.
Exactly.
Instead of,
The staff report has it correct.
okay,
It's for fiscal year end 19, which ends June 30th, 2019, and then the coming June 30th, 2020.
So moved.
anything else you want to say about this?
Not too much. We're going to probably do an RFP. I would like to do both the PHWA and the city RFP for searching for a new auditor at the same time. With all the staff changes and everything going on, it would probably be better to do this a year from now when we're coming close to the June 2021 that will need to be audited. So if we don't get into it, usually it's a good idea to change your auditors if you've had the same one for 7 years or more, because there's a complacency they can get into. I don't think we have that issue, but it's more or less a cost item that if we go out, when they combine these together, we may be able to get a better price.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, that was going to be my question too. This is after, this would be 6 years, so my question would be just that. Should we continue using the same auditor for in excess of 6 years? I have no problem approving this, but it's a good idea to go out and look around.
Any other questions? Okay. Can I get?
I have a question, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Councilman Gama.
So, to be clear, then our current auditor is going to perform the audit June 30th, 2020?
Yes.
And then?
And then we should probably, between August and about this time next year, be setting out an RFP to get other auditors. You usually want to time it where it's not when they're doing taxes and calendar year end stuff.
Okay, so you said it's probably not a good idea to stick with the same auditor for 7 years or something to that effect. I mean, and so are we going to only look for a new auditing firm, or are we going to also include the current firm in the RFP?
I would include the current auditor. There's no reason to exclude them. And the firm that we have has been merged. It was a different firm when we even first started this, and they were based out of the Bay Area. Now they're based out of, I think Albuquerque, or I think it's Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's a lot of the same auditors, but they've been bought out by a new firm. I think it was Harshal before, and now it's Patel and Associates.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion? We have a motion? No, we don't have a motion. Can I get a motion?
I'd like to
Second.
move approval.
Okay.
Second.
All right, and we need a roll call. No, we don't. Just a voice vote, okay? This is a receive and file. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Motion
think they're
carried.
receiving files for the next one.
Yeah, this one's for
This
approval
one
of the
should have
contract.
12.
extension. We will
You're
file it
approving
a
their
little bit.
contract.
Oh, okay, we do. I was looking at the wrong one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
So we
the
do
next
need a
one.
roll call vote for this one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Berg,
Here.
Councilmember Rollins,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama,
Here. That's what Will said.
Did I say here?
Yeah.
I meant yes.
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 He's here,
It's
I'm
a new
here.
meeting.
Yes.
just making sure everybody's still awake up there. Mayor Pro Tem Munoz-Shop?
Yes.
Mayor Hernandez?
Yes. Okay. Now we're on item 13, 2018-19 fiscal year comprehensive annual financial report, CAFR presentation.
Yeah, this one is the item that we just approved. And this has their work coming in. It basically gives us a clean opinion, which is what we look for. When it's not a clean opinion, it would be qualified, meaning they can't, in their professional opinion, say that it fairly presents the statement results. You know, in the staff report that is 6 pages, it's kind of lengthy in there. I kind of covered most of the the items in there. I can either address some specifics to the financial report itself, or even go through anything.
If I may.
Yes, Councilman Donna.
I always like to play music for your ears, so I'm going to talk about unfunded liabilities, right? So on page 5, I guess it is a staff of the CAFR, it says the city expects to make more deposits to further fund the pension costs in the future. I just pointing this out so that perhaps we could get it on an agenda and at some point, perhaps in this budgeting process, decide how much, because we haven't made any decision on that, how much over what course. So I just hope that we could readdress possibly by engaging RSI.
To add to that, the RSI gentleman, I'm drawing a blank, Pete
Constant.
Yeah, when he came out, he was spot on his overview of the entire system and even ours. And one of the things he said, we don't have a specific funding strategy. We do have that with our other post-employment benefits, the OPEB liabilities, but we don't have a specific funding strategy for our PERS retirement liability. We have set up a discussion where we listen to the PARS side, which is proposing us to invest money in there that should beat the PERS investment amount. And we have a PERS actuarial that will come in and give their perspective. And I think what I'll probably finally recommend to our city manager is that we get somebody out here as a financial expert that doesn't have any skin in the game for either one to kind of give us an overview. Is it better for us to send the money to CalPERS to pay down those debts, to lessen the interest that we're paying to them? Is it better to do this investment strategy and kind of really hone down into the details of the funding strategy that RSI was referring to? And what Stephen has always talked about, if we get one-time monies or we have funding sources to place that to there, it's very, very supportive, very financially prudent, and I'm strongly behind it. The problem is we really have to get an unbiased approach to look at all these different angles so that we are making the right decision down the road. I think in 2007, we had financed some pension obligation bonds to deal with some of these things, and that money went to PERS, but we need somebody kind of to analyze how well that went. And that real long-term view that PERS changes, so those actuarial amounts change, and how will be positively impacted by any variation that it goes to.
Yeah, and the biggest takeaway I had was that if PERS doesn't make their investment strategy target, look at the stock market over the last week. When these studies are done, timing is very important. Sometimes it's bad timing, sometimes it's good timing. So, I also noticed in here that it did reaffirm that our funding position is going down and our payments are going up. So, just wanted, perhaps we could get this on the agenda for further in-depth evaluation and discussion. I know hopefully that's music to your ears.
Yeah, Charles Peretz and I have been working on that and trying to get an unbiased perspective to kind of come in and give us an overview. And I think we have two different biased perspectives, finding that financial. I think it would be the same thing if we were going out to do any type of debt issuance. We would have a financial advisor that's an expert in those matters to kind of help us. And we're in that process now, but I don't know if we have a specific date really earmarked out for that.
Any more questions?
I was just question. How does the auditing and the revenues and the report balance in with the Measure U funds? So the revenue comes in for are they auditing it to make sure that it was spent the way it is, and is it handled in this, or is it handled in something completely separate, or how do they do it?
Audit those specific Measure U funds. They look at it in comparison to all the city's revenues. So what they do is they take a materiality threshold and they'll look at it based on that. I think eventually that number will be up there, but it's pretty easy. We get that number verified through our financial consultants, HDL. They came in, and I think it was somewhere between 4 and 5, maybe even 600,000 that we got in that first quarter when it was starting up. We're starting to get those revenue numbers. What we reported to the Tax Measure U Oversight Committee is a simplified name. I think it was a month or two ago. We reported to them the revenue that we got from April 1 through June 30th and from July 1 through September. Pretty soon in April, I'll get the information for October through December. And we have a potential meeting coming up April 14th with them, and that's where we plan to earmark how those monies are spent. It'll be real easy to identify from last year because we have that year closed off. We're hoping to be able to have, since we have December closed off, and that's what we'll be reporting real soon to council, we're hoping to be able to give them that. So they'll basically have the first quarter when it started, the first half of the year now, and then we'll kind of start drilling down into that.
That term you use, I'm just, what is materiality?
Well, they look at the overall picture. Let's say it's $100 million is our annual revenue. They will say a material misstatement of that revenue would occur if we had a $1.5 million difference. So that's a 1.5% materiality threshold. So they'll sometimes put that in there. Now that's a mixture and measure that they do as auditors for their audit risk. A lot of times they won't tell you that because, like, if we say, oh, it's a $10,000 materiality risk, if we make a $9,000 error, they won't necessarily catch it. So they don't a lot of times tell you that, but I know in my former auditing positions, you calculate that as the audit risk, and then that's what the auditors will have. So they do have a materiality threshold, but they don't quantify it to us management. They may do that to the city council. But a lot of times they won't do that because then we can kind of gauge what their risk is and how, and try and beat them at the game if that was the ploy that somebody was doing.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. McDonald. All right, so we have a roll call vote on this. I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Councilmember Rollins,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Munoz-Schnapp,
Yes.
Mayor Hernandez.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Do you have the next item as well?
I can keep it up here since Brad has been here so
Okay.
long. I
This
mean,
is a-
direction comes from him, but all the history, I think I've got it covered here.
Okay, so this is the City Port Community Benefit Fund update.
And we tried to make this so it was easy to understand and easy to follow. But what's easy to follow for an accountant doesn't necessarily make that true to the general public or the average person. So what we did is we put down the amounts that were priorly approved by the councils, what we have spent through December 31st, and the amounts remaining. Like in particular, the third item from the top, it says joint sponsorship of a beach port celebration. That $25,000, we just cut a check to Reach for the Wainimi Beach Festival that's coming up this summer. So although that one says amount remaining, it's just recently been spent. But some of those amounts remaining have not had any expenditures towards them, may not have a specific plan in place. And so that could be something that the council could say, let's not do this, let's do, that, and kind of change that. Some of the ones that I have down below, at the very bottom where it says remaining authorization to be approved, that negative 17,000 is all the amounts for specific activities that they approved, but that the actual expenditure when it finally came in was a little higher. So really what we're asking for is the council to approve the final amounts on some of these, which down below are negatives. That's why we have two positive numbers of 18,000 and 100,000, but they're netted with the $17,400 and $800 negative amounts. And that really just accounts for all the over the original approval to finish up these projects.
And Mr. Connors, do you have a plan to come back with us on a strategy for expending these funds, or how are we going to
Yeah, so
address this?
part of the nature of this particular element was to reaffirm the process by which we nominate, identify, and then collaborate with the port in order to execute projects against this particular fund, and also to identify what the current unencumbered component of the fund exists at 99,000, and start to build that. And when I did this with Ken running those numbers, the COVID virus issue presented itself, we entered in a emergency declaration, which is pending council approval tonight. And we want to identify at least a wedge in a fund which we can apply in terms of preparation mitigation. So the second part of this particular presentation was to identify a fund element so that we could apply it to this emergency preparation for potential or mitigations against the virus.
Okay, any questions from council?
So then, with,
Councilman Rollins?
I'm sorry, with the so there's 99,000 and coming up, there's a proposal for another 50,000. So then the remaining 50,000, what would be the process for that?
So the 50,000 ceiling is just an ability to pay immediately any unanticipated budget costs that were unplanned before this virus presented itself. We expect that to be recovered as part of our emergency declaration. So that 99,000 will always exist, but we just want to use that fund in the current contingency that we need to pay for things that we have not budgeted for. So that 99,000 will always be available to this fund and projects that we plan outside of emergency requirements. And there are some projects that still exist within that allocation that can be changed or altered or reallocated if we want to.
Okay, so with the 50,000 that we're going to be discussing later on, there's still $50,000. Are we looking to put that on hold for a while, or how will that process, and what is the timeline to get that taken care of?
We are still going to populate recommendations for projects up and to and including the 99,000. And if we identify any of projects that need to be either canceled or reallocated, we will go and look at projects to fill that gap as well. So we will continue to identify projects to close and fully expend that fund.
So is that something that the council then in turn will develop those projects?
We should have input to that. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, did you have?
Oh, yeah, I did have something
Yeah.
else, but not. So we usually have then new funds to spend. So this is just talking about those that we have yet to spend on prior year's community fund, right? And so as we move into this new year here, we're in March, I suspect that the port would already know like what the new funds would be. And through our Port City Standing Committee, we could take ideas, because now we're into those years where both of us have to agree to those identified projects that we want to spend the money on. So I would think that maybe at the next, we could identify now, but maybe at the next council meeting is we could discuss among us what kind of projects we would like, because I have a feeling the next meeting might be in April, sometime May maybe,
We'll
for
have to schedule
the
that
city
maybe.
and port. And so that's how we would then proceed forward for the new funds, but also to knowing that we have remaining funds still left to be spent, right?
So at the close of each port fiscal year, assuming gross revenues exceed $13 million and subject to CPI, an amount will be created and we'll collect interest until we actually match projects that we mutually agree on and then execute those projects. What we will do for staff is nominate a bunch of projects that fit the requirements of that fund and give you all sorts of ones to prioritize and select from, and by all means nominate new projects if those are not part of your list.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So just to finish answering your question, which, I'm sorry I cut you off there. The way it has worked in the past year, with former Mayor Berg and I, is we would take these proposed projects to the Port City Committee and review them with them, and they would give it their approval, give that list their approval. So that's the process. And then we come back and say, yes, they agreed to this list of projects. And then we move forward.
And that is exactly the process that I'm activating, exactly as you described.
Yeah, and I want to say all those numbers that are down at the bottom, that 100,000, that's available this year based on last year's 18-19 port operations. So everything down below, we didn't have 18,000 approved and programmed from the year before that, and then we have the 100,000, and then the prior year's over expenditures. That's why it's netting to 99. But it is truly the current year that we have available. They notified us in December from last year's port operations.
Councilman Rollins.
So at a future meeting coming up, staff will come up with kind of their bucket list of things that they think could fit into the community benefit fund. We as a council will come up with our ideas, and then the representatives for the Port Committee will then present those, or I guess we'd probably have to prioritize them.
Well, that's what.
There may be more needs, more requests than needs.
I think the city manager was suggesting that staff comes up with a list and then we prioritize it, but I imagine there would be room for us to add anything that we feel is missing from that list of staff recommendations.
Yeah, what, if I may, what is the procedure for, say, myself to submit an idea? Like, I have one in my head right now that I think makes big sense, but, you know, how do we, would we just like, here's an idea for a community benefit fund, or?
You can submit directly to me. I mean, the process of the staff is so that we can actually do cost estimates, so that we can assign a reasonable amount towards that fund, so that we know how much maneuvering we have with project nominations. And then we can kind of work from that unencumbered number until we get another fiscal year of funding. But if you have a nomination that you would like to us to field, we'd be happy to take that, treat it for cost estimates, and then link it and sync it up with nominated projects specific to this one.
And then when the community, or the master parks plan comes out, some of the things that we might have in mind might be a part of that. So, yeah, so there's a lot of things in the hopper right now in terms of community projects.
Yes, I concur. There's an ample number of projects awaiting a funding sponsor.
Yeah.
And I imagine that when it's brought back to council, we'll have another opportunity to discuss our ideas.
That is correct, Mayor.
All right. Thank you. Do we need where am I on this? Okay, so I need a motion and a second to receive and file the city's update on the community benefit fund.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and we need a roll call vote.
Councilmember Berg,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Munoz-Schnapp,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Councilmember Rollins,
Yes.
Mayor Hernandez.
Yes. Okay, that takes us to item 15 on the addendum to our city council regular meeting agenda, and that is confirmation of a resolution proclaiming the existence of a local emergency and authorization of up to $50,000 to facilitate the city's emergency response in support of COVID-19 virus response options. And Mr. City Manager, do you want to speak to this?
Yes, in advance of and consistent synchronized with the county adjacent municipalities and recommendations from public health experts, we activated a series of response options and levels associated with a variety of different triggers. On Friday, those triggers were activated, culminating really with the declaration of a local emergency by Ventura County Public Health, which activated almost in synchronization every municipality to activate a similar local emergency declaration. By city ordinance, I was authorized to do that on behalf of the city, pending eventual city council approval at the next opportunity, which is tonight. And so this particular agenda just it closes that particular issue with the city council. In addition to that, as we described earlier, we wanted to have a funding vehicle to account for emergency-specific costs, and we identified a $50,000 ceiling in the community benefit fund in order to do that, assuming that all those costs would be recoverable based on that emergency declaration.
I personally think and professionally think that's very prudent to set aside some funds. Rarely do we see that happen at the local government level where they declare an emergency and actually set aside money in case there's contingencies or costs that we incur up until the point we get reimbursed. So thank you for forward thinking on that. And I know that you'll have to come back. We come back every 14 days to ratify until we decided that this resolution needs to be terminated. So.
Yes, Mayor, that is correct. And I'd also, if I may, I think it's appropriate to commend the staff in terms of some really forward-thinking and kind of deep thoughts and impacts and consequences in all of their various departments, so that we can be resilient and support all of the services that the city is obligated to provide for its citizens. They did a really good job.
Yes, accommodations to staff and to our leadership here for moving that quickly and getting staff to respond. So thank you for that. Any other comments, questions?
I have a comment. Thanks for the forward thinking of the team that's here and the team that's represented that's not in this meeting tonight, for moving forward on this. This is very important. The last time we had an emergency thing like this was when we had the beach really getting eroded, and we had to continue coming back at the city councils to review what was going on, just to keep everybody abreast of all of that. So it's, to bring it to this level took a lot, and it's going to continue to take a lot as we proceed through this. But thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. It's the right thing to do.
So motion to confirm the execution of the resolution and authorize the expenditure of up to $50,000. We have a motion and a second.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't think we need a roll call vote on this, right? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. We're now at the end of our agenda. We are, I don't think we've received any public comments via email that we need to talk about? Okay. This is the time for council member reports, comments, and requests for future agenda items. Who would like to begin?
Start down here, and I have nothing to report.
Councilman Don?
Yes, it was just about a year ago today when the final dredging was completed, and if you take a look at the beach right now, we have a long way to go to the next dredge cycle. So Beacon is working on our behalf. We did some great moves to try and get the stakeholders all together. However, the coronavirus now appears that it's going to disrupt our travel to Washington, so I don't know how that's going to impact our I mean, it appears that it may do that. So I just wanted to bring to the attention of the council that Beacon is going through a transitional period over the next year. They're going to change the way they function, and I'm going to have a meeting a teleconference on Friday, and I'm hoping that we could have Beacon come out at our next meeting to make a presentation about those changes that we are anticipating coming. Yeah, I think I'm a little concerned that we may run our beach right up to the sidewalk again. But we have quite a ways to go, and we'll just have to see what happens. But our next dredge cycle isn't till
Beacon's October.
October, not this October.
This October.
I don't, That's not what I was told.
I happened to run into Susie Watkins at the military council reception, and she gave me good news that Congress has approved and authorized the expenditure for our sand, the dredging and the sand. We're short about $4 million, but she thinks that that will be tagged on at the end, and the dredging is scheduled to start this October. Do you have something different, Mr. Sinbad?
I think that's the
No, Mayor,
deepening.
and Councilmember Gao, I will validate all those dates and timeframes so that,
Well, anyways, I think that may be the deepening of the port, because I know that there's 300, anyways. So I was with Brian Brennan this weekend, so apparently it'd be nice to have an update for him, so. Mentioned earlier about looking into the possibility of a trash boom over there at the J Street Canal. I think it's something that would benefit the environment greatly, considering the amount of pollution that makes it to our beach. And future agenda items, again, I'd just like to request that we, at some point in the future, get on the agenda a discussion of the unfunded liability and what plans that we could come up to contribute into that trust, additional contributions in the best way. That's it.
Councilman Mullins, do you have anything?
Yeah, I attended a REACH meeting last week. One of the forward movements that we're doing is we're considering contracting out to a company called Visionality to look into our, to make the REACH program a little bit more robust, both in their fundraising aims and then also perhaps reaching out as far as developing a more robust board and developing some definite goals and objectives. So there's different layers as to how much we can get involved with this company, and we're looking in that and making some decisions. We are also bringing in somebody from Hueneme High School to serve on the REACH board because we want to have some youth involvement as far as some of the decision-making in REACH. So.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So with the Sister City Committee, just want to let you all know, because of COVID-19, we're not going to have the Sister City meet here in Port Hueneme. That was a blow to us, but we do understand to taking the no, we're actually going to have a teleconference instead. So it was unanimously approved that that's how the Sister City group was going to move forward. So we're now on their radar, and hopefully we'll be able to host them at a future meeting. But this would be for the Southern California section of the Sister Cities International. So just take that off your calendar for the following Saturday. We didn't have a Port Hueneme Water Agency this afternoon, so nothing else to report there. A few of us attended the CB Ball last Saturday, not this one, but the prior one, and the city was well represented by folks that were there to support the CBs and the wonderful work that they have continued to do since 1942 when they were called into action. And it was really interesting to see, as they always honor the oldest CB and the youngest CB. Just to let you know, the oldest CB there, not active, but you know, the oldest one there, and the youngest one were both from the same community in West Virginia, but 72 years apart. It was an amazing story to then be able to witness, right? So you probably all know who the oldest CB is there. And last but not least, the federal employed women actually have a conference that comes up. I don't necessarily think every year, but every so often they do have a 2 to 3 day conference that is being hosted here. And so the mayor and I have been asked to come out and present a proclamation and be part of their festivities. Hopefully it's still going to happen at the end of the at the end of this month, but it really goes to show just the magnitude and the contributions that women represent within the federal employee system here in our local communities. So we're going to be there to support them for the conference. It's the 30th and 31st.
Oh, yeah, that's right, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'll make sure it's on the calendar.
That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. I have about 3 items. I'll try to keep them brief because I know we're getting into the late hours. Take 5 and Read to Kids 2020 is upon us. It's coming up Friday, May 8th and May 11th. So I know that several of us have been invited to participate in that. I plan on participating, and I think Councilman Rollins and Mayor Pro Tem have also agreed to participate. I don't know if anybody's getting back to Lauren Arzu. Did you agree? Okay. So just make sure you respond to Lauren and let her know, because she kind of sent it out to everybody, and we don't know, I don't know who's going to be participating from our city. So I just want to make sure some of us are, or at least one of us.
I did respond.
Okay.
And it was a great activity last year.
Great, thank you. I also wanted to mention, keep our radars active for the strategic plan that's we've all been involved in. And we did have a conference call with Chris Grimm from ARIA, the city manager, and I. And I want to just encourage the city council to be on the lookout for an upcoming meeting that she'll be scheduling with us. She wants us to really just start leaning forward on the strategic plan and start looking at the 10-year vision. And we'll be confirming the strategic initiatives that will be included in the plan. So let's not, over this coronavirus emergency, just let's keep our sights on the future, and hopefully the coronavirus won't be around then. But just wanted to let you know that we'll be having a meeting with the city council to, again, look at the 10-year vision and confirm the strategic initiatives.
About when is there an approximate time when she's going to be doing this in the next month?
Do you know, Mr. Connors, when this meeting might be held?
I don't have a particular date. I know that the intent was to do it as soon as possible, and then for me to provide a strategic planning update at this chamber meeting in the very near future, like within the next 2 council meetings.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I developed the mission statement for the city council, and it went out to everyone, but we didn't get any comments back. So I wasn't particularly pleased with it. I just wrote it to encompass the thoughts that I had in terms of what the council's objectives are, but I certainly would appreciate your feedback, because I didn't think it was a polished mission statement. So.
I liked it.
Okay.
So my feedback was, I don't see anything I can improve on here. I think you summarized it well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody was okay with it?
Yeah, I reacted to it, and I said it contained all the elements. Didn't have any negative elements that I didn't want in it, so.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you for that. The other item is I just wanted to share with you that I have an opportunity recently to work with the Yellow Jackets out of Oxnard High School and Hueneme High School. This group, it's a robotic advanced technology group from the high schools. They build robots, they get involved in coding, learning coding, and it's been a real pleasure working with them, and I continue to work with them. Right now they're seeking funding to go out and compete against other jurisdictions and eventually compete on a world or international basis. So I have submitted a grant request to city manager to consider using maybe community development funds or cannabis funds to help fund this group. But I think this is in line with our strategic plan, our goal to make Port Hueneme the hub of advanced technologies, and with what's going on the base and with FathomWorks, I mean, this could really be a reality for us, and I want to see us move in that direction. So I think this is just one step, one piece of the puzzle in moving forward that direction. So I just wanted to make you all aware. I'm working with this group, and that I submitted this grant request.
Hey, Mayor Hernandez, wasn't there a recent competition or something with the different robotic groups? I only know because one of the kids on my high school tennis team participated in it.
Most likely, there's competitions going on regularly. The next one is going to be with Wings over Camarillo. It's an air show that the Camarillo Airport
Oh, wow.
does. So they'll be competing there.
Good.
Okay. And that's all I have. All right. Any more comments? Okay. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. It is 9 o'clock. Yeah. Thank you.
Chewy.